Well, the shooting happened while Kirk was speaking in front of a crowd of thousands of people.
So this has led to renewed concerns, right, about safety at those large gatherings and events, and as well for political figures. Your reporter Roger Suzanne live right outside the state capitol in Hartford, explaining what officials here in Connecticut are doing to keep everyone safe. Roger.
Good morning, ladies. And yes, those security experts already taking action here at the state capitol. Even though we are not in a legislative session, police are still boosting patrols in this area, really out of an abundance of caution. And at the same time, security experts at other venues are wrestling with the same types of high stakes and important questions. And listen, we do want to stress that the Capitol is a very safe building to begin with. You have to walk through metal detectors and pass through a security screening to get in. But Capitol Police Chief Luis Casanova says his team will be even more proactive here and at off-site events involving state lawmakers. And retired Secret Service agent Bobby McDonald tells us he believes Kirk's shocking assassination will also change the way universities host large events. He believes leaders of some schools and venues will beef up security, and others may actually choose not to host public speeches and other events out of an abundance of caution. Now, it should be stated that all of the experts that we spoke with are optimistic that hopefully these types of extra security measures will not be needed permanently, but again, these certainly are very challenging times. Also, we should stress, again, no credible threats have been made against any Connecticut venues that we're aware of. Reporting live this morning in Hartford, outside the state capitol, I'm your reporter Roger Suzanne, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, thanks.